Okay? The third step then in the speech-making process is to develop your central idea. And your central idea is basically a preview of your main points. So the third step and the fourth step are very closely related because the fourth step is to generate your main ideas. And so it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Which one comes first? It doesn't really matter. They both have to exist in order for the other one to exist for our purposes. Okay? So I don't care which way you do that. You could write out your main points first and then put them into a sentence. You can write them in a sentence first and then spread them out into your main points. I don't care how you do it. But you do need to have both of them. You have to have the main points, and then you're going to write them in a one-sentence statement. But basically, when you're coming up with your main points, what are you doing? You're deciding the content of your speech, right? Deciding what you're going to include, what you're not going to include. So how do you consider your audience when you're deciding what to include and what not to include? Yes, you have to consider what's interesting for them. What's general knowledge about the topic? What everybody probably should know or maybe already knows about it? What were you going to say, Jim? Okay, so keep it to their level so it's not too complicated, it's not too trivial so that they don't feel like they're being condescended to, but keep it right at their level. Yes, very good. All right. Fifth step in the speech-making process then is to gather supporting material. And here we're going to go out and we're going to look for stuff to put into our speech. We're going to go onto the internet and do some research. We might look in some books. We might look in some magazines. We might look in a bunch of different places. We might go interview somebody. But we're going to gather some information to put into our speeches. So when we're out looking for stuff to include in our speeches, how do we consider our audience with that? Yeah, very good. You can't have words for a group that can't read, so you need to consider their age, make sure that it's appropriate for them. Similar to the other steps, you want to make sure that it's interesting to them. Okay, make sure that it's something that's going to grab their attention and help keep their attention, get them interested in your speech and keep them that way. The next step in our speech-making process is to organize the speech. And here, when we're organizing the speech, we've got our topic, we know our purpose for our speech, we've developed our central idea and our main points, so we know pretty much the information we want to include. We went and did our research, and now we're going to bring it all together. And we're going to organize it. And we're going to put it into a format that our audience can understand. Yes? And so when we're considering our audience, when we're organizing our speech, they should be able to understand it. And what else? How else could we consider our audience? Exactly. It should flow well, right? It should be easy to understand. It should flow well so that it's not choppy and broken up so that it confuses them. We want it to be organized and flow well. The seventh step in our process then is to rehearse the speech. And what do you guys think are some ways that you could consider your audience when you're at home practicing your speech? How might you consider them? Yeah, so you set something up and practice looking at it like it's your audience. You could, and then you're practicing your eye contact, right? Yep, you could use pictures. Linda, and then Jim? Yeah, practice using your visual aids so that when it comes time to use them, you know how to do that. Jim? Very good. If you practice in front of a mirror, then you can see your facial expressions and how they look. Yes, ma'am? Very good. Make sure that you know your topic well, because if you don't, you won't keep your audience's interest. So, in other words, if you sound like you don't know what you're talking about, or like if you don't care about your speech, they're not going to care about it either, right? Okay. Yes, make sure that you know what's on your note card very well. So really, just in the act of rehearsing your speech, you're sort of being considerate of your audience, aren't you? Just by the fact that you're practicing your speech. Could you practice things like eye contact? Can you practice that, we said? Can you practice things like vocal projection? Yes? You should practice speaking loud enough so that everybody can hear you. Here's the thing. If you think that you're going to come in here and you're normally a soft-spoken person and you normally talk like this and we can't normally hear you very well, and you don't ever project your voice, and you think you're going to come in here and give your speech, and for the first time you're going to talk loud, that's not going to happen. It's going to be extremely uncomfortable for you. So you should practice talking a little bit louder in that speaking voice so that when you get up here to speak, it's okay. It doesn't shock you and say, ooh, whose voice was that just came out of my mouth? Okay, so it'll be comfortable for you. All right, and then finally you want to deliver your speech. When you're delivering your speech, it's going to be very similar to the things that you did to consider your audience when you were practicing your speech. Because when you're delivering your speech, you also want to make eye contact, right? Project your voice. And that is the key difference. That is the key difference. Very good, is to use the feedback. You should pay attention to your audience. And if they look at you like, huh? Then what should you do? They're looking at you all confused. You should what? You should explain it. You should stop and explain yourself. If they're all kind of like, kind of bored, then what should you do? Clap your hands real loud, get their attention. No, you should probably, but you should do something to get their attention, yes? Maybe you could tell a joke, throw in some humor, something like that. Yes. And if they're all looking at you and smiling and nodding and making good eye contact with you and laughing at your jokes in the appropriate places, then you know that you're doing a good job, right? So yes, you should absolutely pay attention to that feedback. Any questions about the 8 steps of the speech making